Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, a.k.a. GMAC, and it is time to preview another Knicks matchup, this time on Friday night against the Los Angeles Clippers. Late night turns into an early morning for all of us that stayed up late to watch the Knicks lose a heartbreaker in overtime against the Lakers. A heartbreaker in more ways than one when you factor in the Jalen Brunson injury. We are waiting with a bated breath to hear the severity of his ankle sprain. I know all of you have talked to all the Twitter doctors that posted videos today that, and I say Twitter doctors as in like the sports medicine people that actually know what they're talking about, in that we're wondering if it's a grade 1, grade 2, or grade 3 ankle sprain. What we do know is that he's not going to play tonight against the Los Angeles Clippers. While he hasn't been ruled out, I guess I should say the educated guess is that he will not play tonight against the Clippers, which means the Knicks will begin life without their captain in the new Inuit Arena. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'll find out the name when Chuck gets up here on stage. It's weird that we're in March and I get to talk about a team that I haven't thought about this entire season. The Knicks are playing the Clippers for the first time this year. A bit of a profile check as we go to it at the beginning of our pods. The Clippers are 33-29 on the season. That's actually worse than they probably have been overall. They're 5-9 in their last 14 games. And really it coincides with an injury to Norm Powell, who was a borderline all-star throughout the year, averaging an efficient 23, 24 points a game. And unfortunately, he went down with a hamstring strain of his own. So the Clippers have been trying to figure out offense without him. A 50-point night from James Harden the other night will certainly help in figuring out offense without him. Ben Simmons, who's also a Clipper, will probably not play. I believe he's been ruled out of this game against the Knicks with a knee injury. Going through some of their data, this is a team that's 19th in offense, but 4th in defense. They generate a lot of points off of turnovers. This team, I should say, they also generate a lot of points off of fast breaks, so they get out in transition. This team is 7th in rebounding. This team is not the most efficient team, 16th in effective field goal percentage, 16th in true shooting. Just like us, they're not big in pace, so they're 21st in pace on the season. The only other things that stand out, this team is about league average across the board in 3-point percentage, field goal percentage, free throw attempts per game. The 10th in net rating for a team that isn't the greatest offensively, and hasn't gotten a ton out of Kawhi Leonard and lost Paul George. It's been an interesting season to watch from afar from the Clippers, which is why coming into this matchup, I do have a ton of questions, aside from the looming question on our end about whether we're going to get Jalen Brunson back at some point this season. So that's enough for me. Let's talk to an expert on the Los Angeles Clippers. And while it has been a long season, one thing that hasn't changed is that this is still the greatest name for a podcast that I have ever heard, from the Clips and Dip podcast, Mr. Chuck Mockler. Chuck, welcome back to Knicks Film School. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. The new intro had me fired up. I know I'm not a Knicks fan, but I was like, okay, yeah, that's a great addition to the Knicks Film School podcast for sure.
Thank you. Made it myself. I should say someone else, so one of our listeners added the animations, or I guess the transitions to the actual photos, but in the countdown of going down from 24 to 1, which I'll say this, I wanted to originally make it a 30-1 and start it with Julius Randle. Nobody in Knicks history has worn number 28. So it was like, okay,
really?
I have to factor that in and make it so that way it starts at a number that makes sense. And so here we are. Chuck, the Clippers. I actually want to talk about the before the season, which is weird because we're 4.5 months into this one. I guess we're closer to 5 months into this one, but I remember, and I'm sorry to go all the way back to this, but the night of free agency, when that opened, that I saw you guys going live, and I felt bad that you guys were going to stay on until the Paul George had made a decision, and then you were live for a couple hours, and then you logged off and said, all right, we're going to call it. Maybe if something happens, we'll come back, but probably not. Within half an hour, 20 minutes of you guys signing off, Paul George signs with the Sixers. And I remembered your perspective on that. If I don't correct me if I'm misrepresenting, but the perspective was how handicapped a Clippers team would be going forward if they agreed to give him the contract that he wanted, that he ended up getting with the Sixers, and how like the second apron's a thing. And if you want any type of roster flexibility, it's honestly the same calculation that the Timberwolves made with Karl Anthony Towns, that you basically want to have some type of flexibility going forward while trying to stay competitive. And what's proven out this season is that, I mean, it sucks to have dropped the way they have, 5-9 in their last 14, as I mentioned. But this has been a competitive season where you're not worried about like what the Thunder will do with your pick, because it's going to be the mid lottery. Like this, the Sixers have ironically been the team that got Paul George and then have to worry about what the Thunder do with their pick. How are you evaluating this season as like the first season post Paul George era, where there's clearly a lot of good to look into it, but I mean, if I'm misrepresenting or if I'm off on this, the contender era is at least on pause for the moment.
Yes, that is a very tasteful way to say that the Clippers aren't winning anything this year or next year. The Paul George thing, we tried to tell Philly fans, right? Like, just from the apron is a very real thing. The Clippers were one of the first teams that really had to deal with the second apron and how to kind of like project flexibility in this really weird new cap era. And they did exactly that. And what that means is Kawhi took the below max deal, which does help the Clippers out. But it means that this year and next year are kind of the same thing, right? Where I had this Clippers team is kind of a, 6 spot would be great. Play in, definitely in the mix. Not out of it or anything like that, but we're sitting, this will change later tonight, but we're sitting, I believe, in the 7th spot right now. It's a really tight race.
Currently 8th, actually. The
Currently
Timberwolves
8th.
won, so it's like a half game separating.
Yeah, so there's that chunk that's right in that play-in battling for the 6th seed. And that's kind of what they're going to be next year as well, too. The flexibility, the books open up after next season, which is great. We'll see how the free agency class looks. But they're executing the plan that they told us they were going to execute, right? Which is, Lawrence Frank did a very GM job of describing, putting his spin on what they're going to do, which is they're not going to tank because they quite literally cannot tank. That would not help them at all. And if fans are mad now at a middling Clippers team, imagine if this team was tanking but had no picks to even look forward to at that. They're going to be, competitive. They got the new arena, the Intuit Dome, as it's known affectionately.
Intuit, not Inuit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I dropped a T. Sorry.
Yeah, the
New Yorker
company,
in me. Yeah.
No worries. The company that charges you way too much money to do your taxes.
Yes. Now that I realize where I remember that name from. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so they got to keep it competitive to get seats in there. They don't want to bottom out, mostly because they can't. And we find ourselves, as you said, the Clippers are kind of average in a lot of things. As always in this 2-1-3 or post 2-1-3 Kawhi era, a lot of things have to go right for the Clippers to be considered contenders or even, an annoying first round exit. And not a lot of things have gone right. Recently, we've gotten Kawhi back, which has been great. The Norm Powell injury, as you mentioned, is huge, but we have guys like James Harden who are refusing to sit, and sometimes you think that's bad, and then sometimes he drops 50 points and you beat the Pistons on the second night of a back-to-back. So it's an average year, which means things can be above average or things can be below average. And right now, I'm hoping they're trending towards above average, because before these couple games, things were pretty bleak.
Well, it's funny that you said that before these couple games, these things were pretty bleak, because I watched the second half. I'll just call it a collapse against the Suns, but then you get a bounce back win against a fun, surging Pistons team where Harden drops 50 points. I don't want to get too much into this matchup just yet. Big picture though, the entire season evaluation and seeing how much really has been riding on Norm Powell being awesome and Zubac being awesome. How sustainable was what you were watching throughout the year, the 31-23 record that I think they got to before this recent stretch? Was it always like, hey, this is great, but at a certain point, James Harden shooting under 40% from the year is going to catch up to us? Like, was there ever a look over your shoulder feel to any of the success they were experiencing?
Absolutely. With any
Okay.
Clippers team, anytime things are going well, you're
Well,
conditioned
yeah.
to look over your shoulder. But you look like Zubats, I do think that's sustainable. I think Zoo's performance, they're 9-2 when he gets more than 15 field goal attempts this year. He's gotten a lot better at passing out of the short roll, and he's a slow improver. You know what I mean? Each year you watch Zoo, there was never spikes. It was always very slow development, which in this era is, of course, the least preferred type of development. But I think Zoo is sustainable. Norm was someone who was on such a hot streak that it was very good. We need it very clearly, but you look at the age, you look at just how things kind of work with injuries and stuff like that. And I wasn't expecting it to happen as long as it has. And now he is out, which is unfortunate. And we're seeing kind of the consequences of your top scorer being out. James Harden has been as good as advertised as we've needed him to, right? Like, you kind of got it when Norm Powell is out and Kawhi Leonard is out. You're riding with however good James Harden is doing,
right?
And he's been more good than bad for sure. There are the classic James Harden lapses where you're kind of wondering what he's doing on defense, or maybe there's a little bit of hero ball, which we saw in that Suns game at the end. Zubats had the seal on Devin Booker a couple times, and Harden decides to take a long three. Kawhi, the team played so well with Kawhi out that everyone was doing a thing that we've all done before, which is, well, once Kawhi comes back in, you plug him in and he's good to go. But this is another year of Kawhi coming back from an injury. The ramp up has been a little up and down, right? We saw him play a lot versus the Lakers, and then he's out late against the Suns, which people were kind of confused about in terms of chasing the win. Jalen Brunson being out tomorrow, which I know we're going to talk about, I was looking forward to not necessarily playing Jalen Brunson because he's very good, but he's one of the better ISO scorers. So it would have been a chance for Kawhi Leonard to show some of the defensive chops coming back, because we've seen the offense for Kawhi kind of come back, but the defense is still where some people are kind of wondering when it's going to come back. So, I mean, this team, I don't know if, being a 6 seed was kind of the pick. That is sustainable, right? Being middle of the pack is certainly sustainable, but not the most exciting. Derrick Jones Jr. has been great as an addition. Chris Dunn is one of the best perimeter defenders right now. He's not exactly lighting it up offensively, but that's not what he's here to do. And since the trade deadline, there's a picture of how things can get better for sure with Bogey and Ben Simmons, but Bogey might be hitting a stride with a shot. Ben Simmons is out, which is a bigger loss than I think non-Clippers people or people who watch the team understand, which is kind of weird and depressing in its own right. But again, just battling injuries, all things considered, I do think it's sustainable. It's March 7th, and we're still talking about this team as a play-in or maybe getting that 6th spot. So it's been okay. They have a lot of games in March. There's some back-to-backs coming up that Kawhi Leonard's going to miss half of. Ben Simmons going to miss half of those too. Hopefully Norm and Derrick Jones Jr. can stay healthy once Norm comes back, I mean. So there's still kind of a long way to go despite the season ending in just a couple weeks. But where we're sitting right now, I think they're a play-in team with a shot at the 6th seed. Yeah.
That 6 seed shot, I have to think it went down a little bit with what the Warriors have been over the since Jimmy Butler, basically, which honestly has nothing to do with the Clippers. It's very much and I don't have to talk about what happened to the other LA team, the manna from heaven that was delivered.
The real manna from heaven was delivered. Very good call.
Was I had a front row seat for it last night, staring at Luka going off in the 4th quarter. And it's like, why the fuck is he on this basketball team? Like, why are we playing Luka Doncic right now? This is not fair. And
the Warriors thing you mentioned up is key. The Warriors are one of the few teams that the Clippers have a tiebreaker over in the conference. The Clippers conference record is 20-21. It is not very good. If they beat the Kings on Sunday, they will have the tiebreaker over the Kings, which is pretty big too. But yeah, those tiebreakers are going to come in pretty clutch.
So we're talking about tiebreakers. It seems like it's this 4-team. It's actually kind of established in my mind, this 4-team race for 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. If we're saying like if I want to make the conclusion that the Warriors are gonna go run off and high, potentially even compete for a 5 or a 4 seed with what they've been since Jimmy Butler went there. If you want to just start and say it's the Timberwolves, the Kings, the Clippers, and I am blanking on the other team in that stretch. The Timberwolves, the Kings, the Clippers. There's one more team.
There's the Mavericks that are a game behind the
Kings.
they're
10th. Let's just call them 10th. Let's just be nice and call them 10th. So maybe the Suns can be the 10th seed. I guess like going through all those scenarios is like part of the routine and part of the season. But like, will it actually like what does a disappointing end to the season look like to you? Will it factor like will how they finish playoff seeding wise factor? If they win a play-in game and get to or if they win a play-in game, end up to 7 or lose 1 and win 1 and get to 8 and they end up playing the Thunder, which is an emotionally charged series on itself, watching what SGA is like how do you picture like the most disappointing ending to the season potentially? But if you want to also inverse it, like what's the most optimistic way this season could potentially end?
The most disappointing way this season ends for the Clippers, all encompassing from an emotional standpoint from all that stuff, is winning a play in game and then getting smoked by the Lakers in the playoffs would be the worst end to this season, because it would just, we all know what happened with the trade. It's they got injected this new life that makes the Lakers basically a top seed in the conference, which they were not at all before this trade happened. That would be incredibly disappointing. Falling completely out of the play-in would be a nightmare, because that probably means that someone else picked up an injury that is not, minor or something like that. Losing to the Thunder would hurt for sure, but they're not the Lakers. You know what I mean? Like it's not, there's not a fuel there, I guess.
So it sounds like you want to avoid. There's no good options. It's like
absolutely not.
They have to get to 6, otherwise it's 7 and you're playing the Lakers in that 2-7, or it's 8 and you're playing the Thunder in that 1-8, or you're in the lottery and the Thunder have your pick.
Right. So there's a lot of only really bad options.
Gotcha. They can get to 6, or they lose to the Nuggets in the 2-7.
Losing to the Nuggets. Like I also best case scenario for this Clippers team is, I don't know. Winning a playoff series is something that this team hasn't done anything consistently enough for me to say that maybe if they get X opponent, they could win a playoff series, because it's been a very up and down season with rotation, who's available, and with quality of play. Winning a home game at Intuit in the playoffs would be great. That would just be nice for the fans, I'm sure Steve Ballmer would appreciate it, and stuff like that. So winning a playoff game at Intuit would be great. Winning the play-in game at Intuit, maybe we get another Pat Bev style, ripping the jersey off like he did for Minnesota.
I think we figured it out, actually. I think we nailed it down. The perfect scenario is that 7-8 where you clinch the 7 seed into it. And now correct me if I'm wrong. Are you in LA? Like,
I am in LA.
Oh, so you're in LA. Have you been to Intuit?
Yes, I've been to Intuit a handful of times. We were there for opening night. We were there for Kawhi's return. Selfishly, it is so much further away from where I live now, so I do not get to as many games as I would like to. But we've been amazing place to watch basketball. Really keeps you locked into what's happening on the court and stuff like that. The video board is absolutely insane and whatnot. If you can get to it, absolutely, catch a game into it.
Have you been there for a non-basketball game, like for other events?
I have not. We got a pretty cool tour of it, but nothing was really happening there. I've heard concerts there are really good. They did a really cool thing where there's some giant piece of mixing equipment that's like really huge that artists usually have to rent out when they go to arenas, and the Clippers, Ballmer just bought one and was like, ours is here, you don't have to rent it out. So I've heard concerts are fun there. I would like to. My friend saw the Harlem Globetrotters there. He said they were great. So, fun for all ages. Add into it. No.
Well, so this is honestly just a necessary. I have no transition into the Luka conversation. I'm sorry to bring it up, but I am curious in your perspective as someone who follows the Clippers, does content about the Clippers, and obviously is a fan of the Clippers. My listeners and I have gone back and forth on this for a while now. The Mets
Sure.
Yankees of it all. I'm a Mets fan, so I understand being the little brother in your city.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to bring it up, Yankee fans, but we got one over this offseason with Juan Soto. However, I do recognize if like Ohtani suddenly got traded to the Yankees and it was just like again, man, for nothing. It's just
Not
like
nothing, but
like we want Giancarlo Stanton in return because we believe power wins champion or guys that play the field win champions.
Yeah.
Even that doesn't make sense because both are DHs. Again, nothing will ever make sense about the Luka trade. From a being in the same city as the Luka trade happening perspective, what has that been like for you, and more specifically for Clippers fans, where it did seem like not that the Clippers had taken over the city, but like there was a 6-7 year stretch, correct me if I'm wrong, where the Clippers didn't lose to the Lakers, and that franchise seemed like they were going into some world of, well, now what do we do post LeBron? It's just like this weird AD team that's at most a 5 or a 6 seed. And again, now they're contenders. That's Nico Harrison calling to probably offer you a terrible deal.
Yeah, exactly.
So what has it been like seeing, like from a Clippers fan perspective, the resurgence of the Lakers? I think that's fascinating.
It's been terrible. Because
I'm sorry that my fascination is in your terror, but I get it. Believe me, I get it. Yeah,
it's an incredible trade and you can use that word in the good way and the bad way, because one thing is it kind of gutted this really cool and intense rivalry that the Mavs and Clippers had, right? We matched up with them every year in the playoffs and whatnot. So there was a really cool, professional, respectful hatred for each other because you had Luka who likes to talk, you had our guys who like to talk. There was a lot of history between that. And, we obviously had PTSD from seeing them in the playoffs, even though we beat them most of the times we played them in the playoffs, except for 1 year. But then seeing it just like, it still feels unbelievable. I'm sure Mavs fans have the same thing where now this guy who used to torture us in conference play and make things difficult in the playoffs now plays for a team with LeBron for the Lakers, and it's full, and they're clicking on all cylinders. And they weirdly, I think, that Mark Williams trade being rescinded helps them in the long run because they keep that pick and their books open up a little bit next year. So it's just like, it's kind of worst case scenario, right? They get gifted, a guy that helps them transition from the post LeBron era. Should he sign that extension? I guess I hope he doesn't. I don't know why. But yeah, it's just been, I think surreal is kind of a word too, because everyone, we all thought Shams got hacked and all that stuff. Like, it's just been, we played them twice in a row recently. We lost both games. They were close games. It wasn't like we got blown out or anything like that, but there's just a clear lift. I'm not saying anything too crazy here, that someone like Luka Doncic gives your team when you have LeBron James on it. And they've, done a good job with Austin Reeves and stuff like that. So it's just like, Redick's been a good coach. So it's just like, I don't know, kind of same old, but with a little more of a bitter taste.
It's almost like, again, to go back to the Mets Yankee comp, it's like, I did have the thought that I understand what's happened since has changed the perception of this trade, but when the Yankees got A-Rod in 2004, like, it was like a month before the season was about to start. Like, spring training was right around the corner, and the Red Sox had spent that whole offseason trying to get A-Rod, and then the league didn't approve it. And then Aaron Boone blows out his knee playing basketball, and then the Yankees GM Brian Cashman is sitting next to A-Rod at a dinner, and just in their small talk over a couple of cocktails.
$250 million.
Can you play third base? Like, yeah, sure. And then by the end of the weekend, he was a Yankee, and the rest is history. Look, I totally blanked on the rivalry that. Like, I had forgotten that there's like a legit Luka Clipper rivalry, the Luka Kawhi battles of the playoffs, both of the bubble, both the year after the bubble. So yeah, I'd completely forgotten. So that sting as well. I do have that appreciation though for what the Clippers, like, looking Paul George in the face and saying like, hey, we have a line we're not going to cross, understanding what they gave up for him, trying to, maintain face. And they not to use this term, but trusted their process. And I feel bad if any of the good that's come out of this Clippers season will ever get overshadowed because of what's happening in the other LA team. But we'll see what happens. And look, it starts tonight at the Intuit Dome against the New York Knicks, who will not have Jalen Brunson most likely. So this is where I like to turn the pot over to my guest and get your thoughts on this matchup, the thoughts about the Knicks, any questions you have. 40-22. If you read the chat right now, which I'm not going to tell you to, but like Knicks fans are just like not happy with the team that's 40-22 at the moment. I'm just staring at the like, well, I'm okay if Tibbs goes, but we can't lose Leon. No, Leon should go too. Johnny Bryant was the mastermind, the personal assistant that he was. Your thoughts on the Knicks and your outsider's perspective on what's going on there.
Well, so the Jalen Brunson thing is brutal. That takes out, I think, I was leaning y'all's way for this matchup with Jalen Brunson being healthy. What worries me is that you had a couple shooters who were very cold last night against the Lakers. And Cat, he's playing back-to-backs. Yeah, he's playing
back-to-back. He plays for Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah.
I know this is a different world, but so it's funny is I did look up the minutes for the Clippers this year. How many times a player has played 40 minutes in a game for the Clippers this year? They have two guys that have played at least four times, 40 minutes in a game. So Harden and Norm Powell. Harden's done it 5 times. Norm Powell's done it 4 times. The Knicks have Mikal Bridges, who has done it 25 times, which leads the NBA. They have Josh Hart, who's done it 21 times, which is 3rd in the NBA. And they have OG Anunoby, who's done it 17 times, which is 4th in the NBA. Wow. So the 1st, 3rd, and 4th in 40-minute games for their wing rotation.
That is incredible. Yeah, that is not what we get here.
No.
Yeah, so looking at it, and I watched a little bit of the game last night. Looking at the box score, too, I mean, Cat, incredibly cold from 3. Campaign, incredibly cold from 3, who's a guy who has killed the Clippers before. So I am worried about those two guys getting hot, and obviously the focus is going to be, I'm assuming, offensively on getting Cat the ball from the Knicks perspective. So Zubac, he was great offensively. He's been really good offensively. He's going to have his hands full with a Cat-centric kind of offense from the Knicks, I'm thinking. He's been very good defensively, but he will be tested, especially against a stretch big who can kind of pull him out of the paint. And then I get that is where Derek Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn come into play, because I'm assuming those two guys are going to start because it's been kind of a rotating starting lineup with Norm out. They started Bogey the other night, Bogdanovic, but Derek Jones Jr. wasn't available. So Derek Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn on defense are going to be huge on when Zoo gets pulled out of the paint, just them kind of doing their usual good perimeter defense stuff. And then I'm hoping we can kind of get over on you guys on rebounding, because you guys do a pretty solid job of a lot of things except for kind of rebounding. Just
offensive rebound. Well, yeah. Okay, so it's gotten better, I'll say. Okay. The offensive rebounding has gotten better, but they're not prioritizing as many shots as possible anymore. They're the Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein teams that had so much gravity in their centers, that were big on drives, like the RJ Barrett, Julius Randle teams, that low turnover, not a ton of ball movement, but we're going to put the shot up. And then shout out to Anthony Irwin, who coined this phrase yesterday. We're going to play volleyball, where you bring your center over to a contested RJ Barrett or Jalen Brunson drive. Mitchell Robinson is right there to clean up. And it led to the 4th ranked offense in the sport a couple years ago without it being an efficient offense whatsoever,
Yeah. That's what gets me too about this Knicks team is it's weird to see a Tom Thibodeau coached team be below average in defense and top 5 in offense. Has that ever happened in the Tom Thibodeau era?
His lexicon, I don't think he's ever had a defense this bad. I don't think he's ever had the defensive personnel like this. Like Mitch Robinson just came back, so maybe that'll clean it up a little bit. But they're playing the majority of their minutes with both Jalen Brunson, or I guess I should say which is a sucky thing to say, both Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns on the floor together. which is just it's two defenders, it's two weak points you can go to. They're playing a lot of drop coverage this year, which and not
Play it
like
against Harden, please.
well, so
Play
that's
drop
the
coverage
thing.
against Harden.
This matchup, I would have assumed, is actually a good thing to do against a team that's not very efficient, not hitting a ton of threes. You could do it, although you're asking for a James Harden 7-3 night if you do that.
But he's also the only guy out there who's really gonna you guys are gonna seed shots to Chris Dunn. I'm sure you're gonna try and funnel the ball to Chris Dunn on the perimeter. He is either lights out or it is rough from 3-point from him. But yeah, I think the drop coverage, if you guys can clog the paint in this one, it'll make things difficult. Kawhi is going, which is huge for the Clippers. Obviously, we've seen him be good offensively. If he can get back to the elbow and kind of his usual comfortable spots, it'll be interesting. But I don't know. We're also going to go small when Drew Eubanks isn't exactly, an elite backup center as far as backup centers go. So you guys are going to see some small ball from us, some Nick Batum at center. And this is where losing Ben Simmons is huge, because Ben Simmons playing the small ball 5 brings the ball up for the Clippers on offense. He gives Harden a break from doing that. So that's why that is such a big loss for the Clips, just from an athleticism, cutting, defending, 1 through 5 perspective. So I think it's going to be kind of a messy game. I think it's going to be like a bit of a very physical matchup, which we'll see how the whistle's been treating us, because it's been bad. Chris Dunn picks up early fouls. He's our best perimeter defender right now. Kawhi's still getting into shape. Then things open up for you guys quite a bit.
Well, so it actually sounds like a repeat of last night against the Lakers. Obviously, no Luka, LeBron, but like the Knicks built their shell, mixed up their pick and roll coverages. I actually thought Tibbs had an outstanding game plan defending the Lakers, and the Lakers had 99 points through 4 quarters with basically making them like if these guys that aren't great 3-point shooters beat you, and figures like it was just the final 6 minutes where the Knicks offense stalled a bit, and like Gabe Vincent hit 3 threes. LeBron was 0 of 6 from 3 and then hit 2 threes in the last 90 seconds of the game. And it's just the reality, like the make or miss of it all, that your game plan can look great for 42 minutes of game time, and then the last 6 minutes it can turn to shit. I think you might see when the Clippers go small, the Knicks go to their double big lineups.
I was going to assume that, because they get punished on, and if Bogdan's out there, if he's hitting his shots, he's great, but on defense, he is a sieve. So he's going to be targeted. It should be, if I were a Knicks fan, I would want him to be targeted on defense. It's gonna, and you'll see the Clippers go through a scoreless stretch too. The Clippers went through a stretch a couple games ago. I think they didn't score for 7.5 minutes of game time, which has to be one of the longer streaks ever for not scoring a point. So I think if your guys if you can take advantage of the non-Harden, non-Kawhi minutes, it'll be a dogfight.
Yeah, they're probably going to start Deuce McBride at point guard. I'm assuming they're going to start they should start Deuce McBride at point guard. And look, if you go to Clean the Glass and look at the Knicks lineup data, you're just getting. So in fact, I did this game on last Saturday. Like, go to Clean the Glass, look at the Knicks lineup data. You see 4 lineups or 3 or 4 lineups that are kind of mid, like kind of light blue, light orange, mostly white. Then there's these like very bright orange lineups that show up, and they all have M. McBride in them.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like every time Deuce plays, good things happen. And it's why. So like last night, I'm talking about the last 6 minutes. Knicks were up 9 with 6 and change to play, and then they put their starting 5 back in, which includes Josh Hart playing the 2, playing the 4. It's really been Brunson, Cat, and then an interchangeable 3-wing rotation or 3-wing setup of Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby. And like the Lakers put LeBron on Cat and said, if you want to bring Cat into the action in the pick and roll, fine, you got LeBron on him. They put Finney Smith on Bridges or Anunoby, I believe. And then they just didn't involve him in the action. It was a lot of like the center's Jackson Hayes is gonna ignore Josh Hart.
Yeah.
And like basically play on the other side of the court and be the help in the nail or just like in the paint. So you're basically doubling Brunson, and you have to either bring Josh Hart into the action so that way Hayes has to guard him as in the pick and roll, or as Brunson drives, just find the open space, Josh. And they didn't really execute it well, but it just becomes a lot of Josh Hart as a result of doing that.
A lot of Josh
But just
Hart.
like becomes that's their crunch time offense. It's like Jalen Brunson, we're going to feature you. And it's just a lot of Josh Hart because teams they're not putting a center on Cat. But this is why I like to bring him Deuce McBride. I understand when people are like, and as in the big picture of it all, if that's Deuce instead of Josh Hart and you have a shooter out there, they're not guarding him with a center. And then you can either bring Deuce into the action or Karl-Anthony Towns, your second best offensive player, into the action. And it makes things a little more creative. But obviously these are yesterday's problems because the Knicks are not going to have Jalen Brunson, which I think is going to be fascinating to see what they pivot to if this is a close game down the stretch. And there's no like the guy who had the second most clutch points, I believe was the front runner for clutch player of the year before this injury happened.
I forgot about that award.
Listen, it's the one award the Knicks have a chance of winning this year. I was very in tune to this award.
And the crunch time, that is where we also, from a Clippers perspective, we want to see who Kawhi is guarding in the crunch time. We want to see defensively where he's at, when it matters, that type of thing. If Chris Dunn is playing with his hair on fire like he usually is on the perimeter, it will probably be Chris Dunn taking the main ball handler and stuff like that. But you mentioned kind of not having a center on Karl-Anthony Towns. I think we'll see Nick Batum on Cat when the Clippers go small, crafty defender, veteran, knows kind of where to shove guys and stuff like that. So Ty hasn't been playing Nick Batum a bunch. Some people think that's some weird conspiracy. I just think maybe it's because Nick Batum is a year older and can't, we need to save him for like the playoffs or something like that. But again, this is where the Ben Simmons loss is huge because he's just another bigger body in a small ball lineup the Clippers can put on one of your your two center lineups.
I am curious. Again, this is life after like your best point of attack defender
now is Chris Dunn.
It's Chris Dunn over Kawhi. And so
right now, all things
right now,
absolutely, it's Chris Dunn. He's playing it in all NBA level for it. It's been really fun to watch. I'm sure Tibbs will love to watch the tape of him not playing the Knicks. But and Kawhi is probably second, and then you have Derrick Jones Jr., who's close as well too. Derrick Jones Jr. can guard a lot of different positions. He will pick up a lot of different Knicks tomorrow. But it's probably Chris Dunn right now for point of attack.
Yeah, this feels like you said, a low scoring. Knicks have to probably win the possession battle. Josh Hart is a creator. Now their second units have been good, so I would wonder if the Knicks just try to play even in the starting minutes, and then their bench units just blitz the Clippers in the second or in the early fourth, and that's the Knicks' path to victory. And it's like it's the exact opposite for the Clippers. Is take advantage of a Knicks starting five that's missing its best player. And
100%. And if they can't, if Bogey's not hitting outside shots, which I don't know if you've looked at his splits, it's very up and down. If Bogdan can't hit his outside shots, we're in trouble for sure. If Drew Eubanks has to play some meaningful minutes, those lineups have not been very good. It's been the opposite of the Deuce McBride lineups that you look at on Cleaning Class. That will be an issue too. And there is a bit of a fatigue thing to think about for the Clippers. I know James Harden has been an Iron Man this year. He just put up 50 on the second night of a back-to-back. He played 38 minutes. Like, at some point, I keep thinking there's going to be a wall that he hits fatigue-wise. He keeps playing, but if we get hero ball, not able to get back on defense, James Harden late in the game, that is when kind of the game plan falls apart.
Chuck, I promise I'm not being rude and laughing.
No.
You said 38 minutes like it's a lot, and I'm coming from the world of Tom Thibodeau, man. Like, it's like, 38, so he's not playing that much.
On the second out of back, that's it, huh? Yeah, no, I'm sure
the entire Knicks starting five played 41 at least last night. Now that game went to overtime, so that's a little different, but I guess we'll see in this matchup. It's very tough to evaluate. I don't have a sample of what the Knicks do without Jalen Brunson. It's one game they played this year, and Campaign started a point guard. So the guy played 60 of 61 games, or 61 of 62 games so far this season, which, he was a front runner for clutch player of the year for a reason. The Knicks have been one of the best clutch teams in the sport this year. Now, to the Knicks fan that doesn't know, the Clippers are 14-15 in their clutch games, if you want to define it as clutch games this season. So about a 500 team in those scenarios. So we will see if this ends up being a clutch game, or if the Knicks playing the game they did last night means they come out a step slow, or if their first trip to Intuit Arena is more prosperous than I'm sorry if I seem a little down today. It's
You're
very
exhausted,
much
man. It makes
it's also
sense.
a day after. Yes, but I come from the school of Tom Thibodeau, though.
Yeah,
like
we're laid back over here.
I'm ready for back-to-backs, baby. The Jalen Brunson thing, I think I speak for the fan base, is now a very gigantic unknown. And it's less so about like, oh, how do we beat the Clippers? It's like, oh, is he going to be back this year? And it's just a 2-week injury. It's just a 2-month injury. So, we'll see what happens. Any final thoughts on this matchup before we wrap up?
Not really. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. You guys don't have Isaiah Hartenstein anymore to terrorize us for getting rid of him and shooting John Wall. That's a whole thing I could write a lot of words about. But no, I'm looking forward to this matchup. I'm hoping James Harden can capture some of the magic. I hope Kawhi can give him some of the break offensively. And here's to Zoo and Cat having an epic battle that hopefully goes, the Clippers' favor. But it's going to be a good one. It might be a little messy. So if you like messy basketball, this one might be for you. Is anyone else going to be out for the Knicks? Other than I'm assuming Jalen Brunson's out. Like that.
Yeah, it is the very safest of assumptions that he will be out for this game. Couldn't put pressure on his ankle against the Lakers in overtime.
That sucks.
I don't want to be disrespectful and say nobody that matters is out.
I know exactly what you mean. Rotationally,
like Precious Achiuwa probably was listed.
Bojan Marchand probably not playing. Yeah,
right. So like so the funny thing is Tyler Kolek, he was an second round draft pick, plays point guard. He's a lefty. I would assume that he makes the trip now from Westchester to LA to be available for this game. I've been wrong before in assuming that the Knicks will just play a guy if a guy is out, and instead they might just play 8 guys in this game instead. So honestly, Marshawn Beauchamp might actually be an option in this
revenge game.
Maybe DeLon Wright gets some run in this game instead. So I'll be curious to see what they do in place of Brunson. It's the entire ecosystem was around this MVP candidate.
Yeah.
Is your guy, and you know this, with like the blueprint falls or collapses if the guy goes out. So you're actually the perfect person to talk to about this, So yeah,
should be a good one.
I hope it's a good one. Like, I could use it after the way last night went, Chuck.
Sure, okay.
Chuck, before you get out of here, let the fine folks at home know where they can find you, Clips and Dip, and all the work that you do.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for hanging out. If you're watching to hear about the other West Coast team you have to play. I am Chuck Mockler. You can find me on Twitter at Chuck Mockler. You can find the Clips and Dip podcast at youtube.com/Clippers podcast or on Twitter at Clippers Pod. It's a very fun hang. We keep it light. We talk about some analytics. We try and make it so you can talk about the Clippers when you're cornered at a party and someone asks, why are you a fan of the Clippers and how are they doing? Thank you so much for having me, by the way, Andrew. Love the new intro. And good luck to the Knicks, except for tonight, I guess.
Except for tonight. Yeah. That's how I usually end these pods. I wish you the best of luck in every game, except this one. So,
exactly.
Chuck, thank you as always. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining me. And thank you to everybody for tuning in for another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dug it, please head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. As I mentioned, you're going to get a lot of me over this West Coast trip because I'm also hosting the post game tonight when the Knicks take on the Los Angeles Clippers. So tune in after the game, bright and early Saturday morning, technically, when I'll recap hopefully what is a Knicks win, but a Knicks game and a matchup regardless. And then I'll be back with another pregame pod on Monday to preview that matchup against the Kings. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll speak with you soon. Peace.